Okay, let's go.
Okay.
Cool.
So,
Well, here we are. Thanks
here we
for
are.
having us.
Yes, Mike Moreno and Steve Marchione, and my dog Isabel.
Isabel, what a good girl, and Craig Snyder.
So
Nice warm welcome.
we have a nice visit from Steven from Houston,
Yep.
and I've known Steven for how many years? 25?
Yeah,
30
about
years?
25 years.
When
yeah.
did you start at Rudy's?
I started, what was it, end of 89? Yeah.
Okay, so I met you after Sir left.
Yeah, that was 90.
Okay.
Yeah, 1990s.
But you know,
26
he
years.
was still there or something.
Yeah, I worked with him for the first year.
Right.
And that was an interesting time because, I mean, John was super busy and he was trying to wrap stuff up at Pensa. So the first year, really, all I did was shape the Mark Knopfler bodies, the carved top bodies, and then do fret jobs on the necks.
Yeah, that I remember.
Yeah, that was basically what I did. And then I started, Rudy had me start doing a little bit of restoration work on some guitars. I didn't do tons of repairs though. That wasn't never my thing. It was mostly the making stuff. But I loved working on, and I got to know Jimmy there.
Right.
Because he'd come in a lot and say hi. I mean, he was in
That's
town.
Jimmy DeQuisto.
Yeah, Jimmy DeQuisto. Yeah, he'd come in like, once a month and poke around. And he was nice. He always liked to see what the young guys were doing.
Right.
And just check it out. What are you working on? Anything cool up here? Rudy bought that safe from those safe guys. And one of them was a guitar player. And so they carried up this safe that was like the size of your closet. And he had all the DeQuistos and D'Angelicos in there.
Right now.
I don't know how they carried it up there.
Yeah, I mean, now he has
Tons.
rooms full.
Right.
An amazing collection.
crazy.
Amazing collection of
Yeah,
stuff.
Rudy was way ahead of the curve
Oh.
on that, like you were.
Yeah, it just great stuff. And
And I got to know Roger there.
and you also started building guitars for all the studio guys.
Yeah. Well, and right away at first, because I got a music degree in college, but living in New York, I very quickly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
See, learn something.
I studied jazz at Naropa University with like Jerry Granelli, and Robin Ford was one of my teachers. There were a bunch of really good people, Bill Douglas, Art Landy. But I think I went to about, and I was practicing like all the time, 5 hours a day. I went to like 5
Just
gigs.
5 hours?
Just 5. I was lazy. But I went to a few gigs in New York when I moved to Manhattan. And I think it was about the 5th gig. I was like, I got to find something else to do professionally. Like, this is not going to happen. Yeah, because there's like guys like Mike, and you go listen to him at some little bar, and I was, 23? And I was just like, man, that's not going to work for me. But I loved making instruments, which is why I found the job at Rudy's. I actually went looking for a job making guitars. Got that. And then at home, I loved making stuff out of wood. So I had a set of tools in my little village apartment and one maple workbench. And by hand, I made like an F5 mandolin. I made an OM guitar, a couple of electrics. So I started making my own guitars. It was 1990.
Right. Right.
A long time.
Yeah, it was interesting because your learning curve was immense, really, because you started with solid bodies and ended up making everything. And what Mike's playing now is like your model is the Semi,
right? Which
is probably I can't say your finest thing, but it's a complete thought.
Well, and it was Mike's idea. I mean, he can tell you how it came about. At that
tell
gig.
me, Mike.
Yeah.
I was just playing a gig in Houston, and Steven came, and I was playing just a 335 at the time, and it was a duo gig, and I was never really completely satisfied with that guitar. I loved like the way it sounded and felt for single line stuff, but chords, and especially using it to play duos and stuff like that, I never really felt like that was the right guitar. And he was just happened to be there at that gig, and could kind of hear that and feel that. And then so afterwards we talked about it, and he was, I said, it needs. He was interested in building a guitar, but I was like, well, for me, it needs to be a kind of semi-hollow and a 335 type guitar. And he was like, okay, let's talk about it, exchange some emails. And then, we started talking about it. And he started, sending me some drawings and then pics. And as soon as I saw the shape and then, the kind of initial idea, I was like, yeah, I mean, I was way into it from the, once I started seeing it like come to life, yeah.
Yeah, because the whole concept was to give Mike originally, but I knew it would apply to lots of different, jazz, rock, blues guitarists, was some of the advantages of the 335 and the solidity of, let's say, a Les Paul, its sort of stature and presence, but everything carved out of solid woods and light and resonant at the same time. So it's combining a whole bunch of stuff. And part of that idea I got from you with that DeQuisto electric you had that had the maple back and neck.
Right,
didn't have the spruce
that was
top?
like a 95 or something.
And it has spruce top, right?
It was maple top.
It was maple top.
But it was thin like this.
It was really thin. Yeah. So I saw that, and so I had that idea.
And I remember the first time when you came over and you saw it.
Yeah.
You said one day you're going to make something like it.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I never forgot. Yeah. Even though it was 15 years later. But
right. Right. Yeah. That was.
I mean, Jimmy was on. He's one of those artists who Jimmy DeQuisto was so like ahead of the curve but he had so many ideas that they could never get all worked out.
Right.
So he'd do a couple of brilliant things here, and then he'd jump and do it over here.
Exactly.
So I've had the luxury of both time and help, because I've got some really, really great woodworkers in my studio in Houston, and great draftsmen too, that I can make some of these things happen and make more than 2 or 3, So it's exciting. These are getting out to so many great players now. Yeah.
Well, it's really a great design. I mean,
thank you.
You did not do your standard semi-hollow.
No.
At all. And one of the things that, for me, that I love about it, it's unbelievably ergonomic.
Yeah.
They're
super comfy.
And I don't know whose idea was to make it this thin.
That was mine.
But it's a great thing.
And then with a full carving, so the middle doesn't feel too
No,
thin.
not at all.
Yeah,
In fact, it feels like it just sort of melts into your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're great on stage, right? I mean, you're the one on stage with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's made my life a lot easier just having a lighter guitar, one, and also just a more resonant guitar. The first thing I remember when I tried the first model of this he made
was
when I kind of just played one thing on it. I was like, oh, what is that? And I felt I never felt the semi-hollow guitar vibrate.
Right.
Like a 335 just doesn't do that.
Well, because it's a laminated
it's
production piece
plywood.
of wood. Yeah, it's plywood.
This felt like I was playing an acoustic guitar.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's got the this little longer string scale.
Right, because they're 25 and a half.
Right.
Yeah.
So you get, for chords, that probably will ring out better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's so balanced as well. It's just like kind of playing a chord on the piano or something. Like you hear every note, and then also just the satisfaction of it. It's like, I mean, for me in the past, I had only gotten that playing a nice acoustic guitar,
right?
But never on a semi-hollow.
You feel like playing
electric.
something?
Yeah, play something.
Sure. that feeling, you know, of playing those kind of open chords.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then, but you know, at the same time, like on an acoustic guitar, you don't get that response like a pickup, you know, guitar.
Right. Well, that's where the Archetype comes in nicely. It sort of crosses over between the two worlds.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't like think about it, but these I experimented and worked on getting the carved thickness right.
Right.
Because you want it breathing a certain way. So like your first one was not actually carved quite like this. It's a little different. So these have evolved some.
Oh yeah.
You know, I find it always very humbling when I watch another guitar player and I have no idea what you just did.
Right. Nobody knows what Mike's doing except maybe like Leo, or there's a few guys who,
you know, it's like, okay,
yeah.
I know chords, but I don't know that one.
And also, you know, we were hanging out with Guy Rabu, the violin maker, and he was watching Leo play, and he was like, yeah, you know, he noticed that there's some similarities with your playing and Leo's, but he's like, why do they sound so different than like Mark Whitfield, besides stylistically? But it's because you guys play with your fingers.
Well, that's that,
and
totally.
And so you have all this polyphonic stuff happening. Exactly. Which, you know, and it works great with that guitar, but
yeah. I mean, there was a period where I didn't play the electric guitar. I mean, this is way before I was playing this guitar, but where I just played all acoustic guitar at home. And you know, if I wasn't playing a gig, I was playing an acoustic guitar. You know, so I worked out. I got into all this other stuff. You know, just like really, you know, checking out Joni Mitchell and Nick Drake and, you know, Brazilian guitar players, and really getting a lot of that stuff in my playing. So that's when it kind of...
You mentioned Joni Mitchell, because that's how my ear perceives a lot of the kind of chord things.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes from that. You know?
Yeah.
There's those things kind of... It's coming from that kind of... Or the, you know, the Brazilian kind of...
Right.
You know, that kind of stuff. So and a lot of it is...
And it's so lush, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's orchestral.
But also, I try to get it to sound like... whenever I play guitar, I'm mostly trying to get it to sound like a Rhodes. You know, that kind of like a...
You know, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's I mean, that thing of where I don't, almost purposely don't, you know, strum out the chord is more like trying to get the attack from the
that's
piano.
cool. It's beautiful.
So that makes it sound different, even if I play a chord that everybody recognizes. You know,
right.
It's like just that thing of hitting all the notes at the same time, which on this guitar, you can really get the benefits of all that, and really will sound like a really truly balanced.
Well, that's a good point. And to me, one of the hallmarks of this model is that the low string, the lowest note to the highest note, all sounds like it's coming from the same guitar.
Yes.
Which is not often you find that. Most of the time it's like, oh, you got a certain sound in the middle, it's great, and that's what this guitar is good for. But it gets muddy, like Les Pauls to me are notoriously muddy on the bottom. You know, and Strats, they're pretty much like a Strat sounds from the top to bottom, but there's a thinness to the sound that doesn't necessarily work for everything or everybody, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's very hard also with the shorter scale to get them to sound that lush. That's one drawback.
Right.
People who use 25 or 24 3/4 scales. It really does affect the way the instrument rings.
And
you can see that historically. Like if you go back.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the oldest, what we consider modern Spanish guitars, they were 25.5 inches.
Really?
Oh yeah, like Torres guitars. So many great makers after him. Simplicio, the early Manuel Ramirez, Jose Ramirez, all those guys. They were all around 25.5 inches and sometimes longer.
Well, it's interesting because on the shorter scale, like the L5 is 25.5. Then when you get into probably the most famous jazz guitar, which is the 175, that's the shorter scale. It's just, can be an easier guitar to navigate.
For a lot of guys, it is.
You know.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm not a big fan of the in-between worlds.
I'm not either.
You know what I mean? I mean, some people can pull it off.
And I've made some of these in 24 3/4, and I love them. So it's not like I think it's a bad scale.
No, it's just another point of view.
Exactly.
And Mike, so tell me, when did you guys get together?
Well, was that gig in Houston?
Yeah, it was.
That was the first time
that
you
was
met?
the first time. I mean, I had.
We're both we both grew up in Houston, Texas, but we didn't know each other. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if. I mean, I knew.
I didn't meet you in New York.
I first heard his name when I saw Mike Woodfield playing that guitar. But I don't think I knew you lived in Houston. Or I guess at that time you probably were still in New York, actually.
Yeah, I was in New York then. And then when I moved back, so when we hooked up at that gig, I had just bought the house I'm in now. So I'd only been back in Texas a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was still sort of new there. That was why, because I don't go out to a lot of gigs anymore.
Right.
And so, but somebody said, you got to go see Mike. Like, he's like the shit now. And I was like, cool, let's check this out.
Yeah, it's funny. I still think of you as New York and not Houston.
I know. Well, I'm bi-coastal in that way. So. Yeah, because New York still feels like home to me, too.
Right. Well, I remember right after 9/11,
Yep.
That was like when I was at your shop.
Yep.
And it was like you were thinking at that time.
I had the new baby girl, my daughter Isabella, who's now 15.
Right, you were thinking at that time.
I was just like, I'm ready for a change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I wanted some palm trees. And also, the workshop
You don't
space.
like the palm trees in New York City?
No. You have to go inside skyscrapers to find
them. Yeah, they're, I don't know, they line Fifth Avenue, Yeah.
They will soon.
Exactly.
Keeps getting warm, they're going to be. But no, it was a good move, though, because I ended up with a lot more space. I have a 3-story workshop now. That's a great luxury for an instrument maker.
Oh, yeah. Well, definitely, when you moved is when your guitar started to...
Right.
You always had a strong electric business.
But the Archetype's really,
Yeah.
And the funny part of the reason, one of the things that helped there was I was able to buy some much bigger, higher quality tools that I didn't have the room for in New York, just to help mill the wood down.
Right.
So I got a big joiner, some giant joiner, huge bandsaw where I can split the maple, and just everything became easier.
Right.
So you make more guitars because you can spend time on the important stuff.
Your wood is extraordinary. Where you sourcing it out?
Man, all over the place. But a lot of the things that because we resaw a whole lot of our wood, it comes through the port of Houston from South America, from Europe, from Africa. Like when I get the ebony there, I'm not going through 4 dealers.
Right. So you actually have your own pirate ship.
Yes.
That you
go basically
down the port and grab the wood.
And when we have a giant Agazani bandsaw, so we resaw all our wood. My shop foreman, Alan Beanland, he's a master resawer. So that's like the back on that guitar. That was from a giant piece of mahogany that we sliced up ourselves. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like I ordered a set from a guitar guy.
Right.
I mean, you can't buy wood like that from dealers.
Right. So that's the answer.
Yeah, flip it this way so we can see a little bit. Oh yeah, look at that. Quilted mahogany that's 16 inches wide. Yeah, that's pretty hard to find.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's fun. It's nice having the freedom to make more stuff and have help and good tools and nice space. I have a beautiful space. Yeah, you got to come see one of these days.
I know.
It's really nice. Yeah.
Well, it's funny when I was very busy with my music for advertising. I used to go to Houston all the time because I did the music for Exxon.
Oh God, yeah.
And that's where all the advertising company was there. So it was a place I would go to often.
For work.
Right. And but I haven't been there for years.
A long time, yeah.
Long time.
One of these days, you'll come. Yeah.
Now you have to move up here.
Yeah, that could happen later too. Yeah. You never know what life has in store. Yeah. We love it up here. It's beautiful. Hudson River Valley is amazing.
Yeah, it's a special
It's very
place.
special, yeah.
Yeah.
And some of my oldest, best friends, you guys, Guy Ray B, the violin maker, a bunch of people are all up here. So it's, I was here twice this year. Yeah, a lot of musicians. Yeah, a lot of great musicians, yeah.
David Torn, you know David?
Jay Azzolina.
Yep.
A lot of great people.
Yep.
John Patitucci.
Doesn't Matheny have a place up here?
Probably. I think he has one everywhere. Every 10 miles. Yeah.
And I think the other thing, talking about these connections and stuff is, for me, being able to work with great players like you guys and have access to, if you don't know what the very best players want and how to make it for them, your guitars aren't any good.
That's the whole thing. I mean, it's funny. DeQuisto told me a story that in the days when he was apprenticing with John D'Angelico, he said every day you would get players coming in with their guitars and saying, roll the edges for me, and
make it feel like this.
Make it feel like this. And he says it was like not a production thing. It wasn't a big deal. People would bring their guitars in. Tony Mottola, Al Caiola, Johnny Smith, all those guys would bring their guitars in, and it would be like, okay, just like string it up for me, or it's buzzing here, or I got a little issue. It wasn't, and he would fix it, and he would just make it so that it was player friendly. Right. And I found that there's not a lot of guys out there. Like Roger Sadowski is amazing at that.
He's great at that.
Because he's has such a deep player list, and he knows how to make a guitar for a player. And that's how he's really gotten as good and great as he is. The same thing. It's like you're dealing with professional players.
Yeah, since 1990, every day is like that.
Yeah.
It was in New York, and in Texas it is too. The guys who come see me in Texas, they may not be world famous like some of my New York clients, but they're really good guitar players.
But you also understand the minutia of it. Like I know that there are times I might drive you crazy about the littlest tiny thing, but you never look at it as an issue of like me being super picky, which I am, as you know.
Yeah, but I like making things perfect. So.
But I know what works, and as a player, and you respect that, and understand it too.